Welcome to CriolloWise podcast, the evolution of the Criollo breed around the world.
All right, let's dive in. Today we're getting into Criollo horses. You know, those South American horses, known for agility, stamina.
Yes.
All that. We've got this excerpt. It's called The Importance of Base Area in Criollo. And trust me, this isn't like a boring technical thing.
Yeah, no.
This is about how they move, how they balance, even how they do those like sidestepping moves.
Yeah, it's all connected to this base area.
Okay, so first off, what is base area? Like, what are we even talking about?
Okay, so picture this. You're looking down at a horse, right? From above,
Yeah.
those four hooves, they make a rectangle. That's their base area.
Huh.
It's like their footprint, their platform for moving. And for a Criollo horse, think about it. They're versatile, right? Herding, dressage, all
Yeah,
that.
they do it all.
That base area, it's super important.
So it's not just about hoof size, it's about the position.
Yeah.
How wide or narrow that rectangle is.
You got it. And that with that stance, it affects their stability, their balance.
Yeah.
Especially for lateral movements, think like sidestepping, turning on their haunches.
Okay, yeah, so not just going straight. See, now you're speaking my language. I ride, and I'm always trying to figure out how to get my horse to move smoothly, efficiently. So how does a wider base mean better stability?
Okay, so think of it like this. A wider base lowers their center of gravity. Like imagine a tightrope walker that uses a long pole, right? That wider base keeps them balanced.
Oh, right, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But wouldn't being wider put more strain on their legs, especially if they're carrying a rider, all that weight?
That's a great question. And it brings up another good thing about a good base area. Even weight distribution.
Okay.
When it's balanced, the horse's weight is spread out, on all four legs. So it's less stress on any one joint or muscle.
Wow, I never thought about it like that. So it's not just wide, it's balanced. But hold on, if they're really wide, wouldn't that make them less flexible? Like for those tight turns and fancy footwork?
Actually, no. A wider base, especially when it's balanced, can actually make them more flexible, particularly in the shoulders and hips. Think of it like this. A wider base gives them more leverage, so they can engage those core muscles and really power through those lateral movements.
Well, it's like having a stronger base to push off from.
Exactly. And those engaged core and hindquarters, those powerful muscles, that's what makes them so good at things like cutting or working equitation.
I see. I'm starting to see how it all connects. But let's talk more about muscles. I'm fascinated by how base area can actually change how a horse uses its muscles. What's happening there?
So with a wider base, especially with good training, they can engage their core and hindquarter muscles more effectively. And these muscles are key for power and impulsion. Those bursts of speed and agility Criollos are known for.
So it's not just about having muscles, it's about using them, right? Because of how they're built.
That's it. And this connects to something called collection. It's when a horse brings their hind legs under their body, engaging their core and hindquarters, creates a more powerful and balanced movement. A wider base helps with this collection. It lets them be more athletic.
That's fascinating. And I bet I've seen this without even realizing it.
For sure. Think about a time you saw a horse, maybe a Criollo that was amazing at something needing agility and power.
Okay.
Maybe they were cutting cattle really fast or doing dressage so gracefully. Their base area probably played a big role.
All right, now I'm going to be looking at horses in a whole new way, trying to see that invisible rectangle. But before we go on, can you give us some more concrete examples of how that wider base turns into those powerful movements?
Oh, yeah. So think about cutting right. Imagine a Criollo going after a cow, matching its every move.
I've seen videos of that. It's crazy how they predict the cow's moves.
Right. And to stay with that cow, they need these bursts of speed, hard stops, spins almost like they're on a dime.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And a wider base, it's super important for those quick changes in direction.
I could see that.
It lets them lower their center of gravity, really dig in with their hindquarters and pivot like it's nothing.
So it's not just speed, it's controlling that speed, being able to stop and turn without falling over.
Exactly. And those strong hindquarters we talked about, those were key for making the force they need for those quick stops and starts. It's like a sports car with a huge engine. You need a strong frame and good tires to handle all that power.
That's a great way to think about it. So I'm picturing this Criollo, right wide base, strong hindquarters. How does that change how they actually move, their gait? Is it different than a horse with a narrower stance?
Yeah, for sure. It all works together. A wider base, especially when it's trained well, it affects their stride length and how efficient they move. They can cover more ground at each step, so they're really efficient over long distances.
That makes sense for a working breed like the Criollo, but wouldn't a longer stride make them LSS agile in tight spaces? Like if they're going through trees or an obstacle course?
That's a good point. And that's where collection becomes even more important. Remember how we talked about the horse bringing its hind legs under its body?
Yeah.
That collection lets them shorten their stride when they need to, so they stay agile even with a longer stride.
Yeah. So it's like they have another gear they can use when they need to be smaller and move around easier.
Exactly. And that's what makes a well-trained Criollo with a good base so special. They can go from a long stride to a shorter, more collected one, just depending on what they're doing.
This is so interesting. I'm seeing how base area is like the starting point for so many things about how a horse moves.
It really is. And it shows how conformation training and natural ability all connect.
Okay, so we've talked about how base area affects how well a horse does. But what about breeding? Can breeders actually choose for a wider base? Or is it just genetics?
That's where it gets really interesting. Genes definitely play a role. And some breeds naturally have a wider or narrower base. But good breeders, they can actually affect conformation through careful choices in breeding.
So they're looking beyond just family history. They're actually looking at the horse's build, that rectangle, to decide.
Exactly. And it's not just wider is better. The ideal base area depends on the breed, what the horse will be doing, and the individual horse's body.
Right. It's about balance. But I bet it's hard to breed for that. What are some challenges breeders have with base area?
One of the big things is base area isn't just from one gene. It's like a bunch of things together. Bone structure, muscles, even the angles of their legs.
So you can't just breed two wide horses and get a wide foal.
No.
It's not that easy.
No, it's more complicated than that.
Yeah.
And sometimes trying to get a wider base can cause other problems. Like if a breeder only focuses on width and not the length or angles of the legs,
I see.
you might get a horse that's wide but with straight legs, which isn't good for how they move or their health.
So it's like a balancing act. You want one thing, but you can't mess up other things.
Exactly. You need to really understand horse conformation and see those little things that make a horse balanced and athletic.
It makes you think about breeding differently. It's not just about looks. It's about how they perform.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
So we've talked about the ideal, but what about horses that maybe don't have the perfect build? What if their base area isn't great? Are they just stuck?
Not at all. A good base definitely helps. But training and good riding can make up for some things.
So it's not impossible, just harder.
Yeah, kind of. And that's why understanding base area is important for trainers.
How so?
Because if they know a horse's strengths and weaknesses, they can train them in a way that helps them be their best.
Makes sense. So say we have a horse with a narrow base. What kind of training can help them, especially for things that need agility and stability?
One big thing is making their core and hindquarters stronger. A strong core helps if they're not naturally stable. It gives them more control over their balance and movement.
So even if they aren't born wide and stable, they can build up those muscles to get better.
Exactly. It's like if you're trying to balance on something narrow, if you have a strong core, you'll stay up easier.
I get it. What kind of exercises would you do to make a horse's core and hindquarters strong?
Lots of things. Hill work is great for building strength. Cavaletti work, where they go over poles, helps with coordination and balance. And even some dressage moves like shoulder in or leg yield, those really work those core muscles and help with collection.
So it's not just lifting weights, it's specific things for specific muscles.
Yeah. And of course the rider manners too. A good rider can use their cues and balance to help the horse find its own balance and get coordinated.
Sounds like even a horse with a not-so-great base can learn to move well with the right training.
Definitely. It might take more time and work, but it's worth it.
This whole deep dive has been amazing. I'm looking at horses differently now, and I can really see how athletic they are.
That's what's so great about learning new things. It helps you understand and appreciate things more.
I agree. So as we finish up this look at base area in Criollo horses, what's the main thing you want listeners to take away?
That base area isn't just some idea. It's a really important thing that affects how a horse moves, how stable they are, and how well they do overall.
It's that invisible rectangle that shapes everything they do.
Exactly. And when we understand it, we can really appreciate how amazing versatile these horses are.
Well said. And that wraps up this episode of The Deep Dive. We hope you enjoyed learning about Criollo horses and how they move. Until next time, happy trails.